Well, here, cheers to our waters, bud.
Sweet.
Yeah, thank you again very much for making the time.
Yeah, my honor, bro.
I really
My
appreciate it.
Yep. Got a drink. Yeah.
So, is there like a particular reason you're in town right now, or?
Yeah. So, well, I'm in a spot right now where thankfully I can come back and visit every few months.
Nice.
Just friends, family, and everything.
Yeah, family still lives here?
Yeah, my mom and dad still live here, so and all my friends and everything for the most part. But I actually came back this time around to kind of prepare a little bit because I'm starting pro wrestling camp in Austin.
Yeah.
His name's Dustin Rhodes. He's famous for being Gold Dust in WWE. His brother's Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes is like the second best guy in WWE right now.
Oh, wow.
But it's a famous wrestling family. Anyways, I'm starting.
Who's the first best in WWE right now?
Roman Reigns is like the most well known. He's like
okay.
the Samoan guy with long black hair. He's jacked.
I bet you if I saw him, I
Yeah,
would
you would
recognize him.
recognize him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you got Brock Lesnar and stuff. But
Okay.
that's it's a very well known wrestling family. But I'm starting there in
Wow.
like Friday actually. So I came back here the week before just to knock some rust off and get used to the movement in the ring and everything because I
Nice.
took quite a bit of time off because of my knee and then also the move. So it's been about like 8 solid months as I've actually like been in the ring. So actually it's been going pretty well the last
pro
couple days.
wrestling ring.
The pro wrestling ring.
Yeah. Have you done like pro wrestling events before?
Not officially, no. Just training. Just like basically
Okay.
like learning the basic bumps, the basic sells, the basic moves, and doing like short little matches. So yeah, I have a decent foundation right now, but I still have a long way to go.
I gotcha. That's cool. I never knew this was like a goal of yours, like to do pro wrestling
Yeah, after I got promoted last year to black belt
in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, in jiu-jitsu.
It's the logical next step.
Yeah, exactly. Most people go that
Pro
way.
wrestling.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I idolized my hero Bill Goldberg growing up. Goldberg from WCW, the famous wrestler. And the way my life has ended out, I am blessed enough to be able to call him like basically like a father figure. He's like my Texas dad.
Wow.
It grew to where like I got to meet him at some point 3 years ago because of CT. CT Fletcher. Yeah, he introduced us, and then it kind of kept growing, and then I moved to Texas, and now I'm blessed enough to be able to go over to his house, train with his son, and he takes care of me as if I was one of his own. So it's like the way he impacted me as a child, the different things that have happened in my life, it really speaks to me. Like this is part of my calling, part of my purpose, not necessarily to do pro wrestling for pro wrestling, but to do pro wrestling for the impact I can make on children because it's my way of paying it forward for what he did for me.
Wow.
And
just the impact that he's made on you, you want to have a similar impact.
100%. Yeah. And I believe that's why my life has led up to the point to where I can now call my childhood hero a friend or a father figure. You know what I mean? Everything's chronological and everything kind of comes full circle. And now I think I'm entering the point of my life to where now it's time to hone in on my skills selfishly to be able to present them to an audience to impact thousands, millions of kids and people at some point here in the near future.
Sure.
So just kind of going through a transition phase in that sense. But yeah, I think WWE, pro wrestling in general, will allow me the platform to have that type of outreach. And really, that's my biggest goal.
Wow, that's really cool. That's kind of how life works. You got to kind of work on yourself first to be able to help other people.
Yeah.
It's like, you can like make a bunch of money and then give it away to people. You can't really help people from a position of ignorance or a position of poverty. You kind of have to work selfishly to be able to work selflessly.
So true. It's so true. That's a big reason why I moved to Texas too, was like back home in Arizona here, I felt like I did pretty good for myself. Developed a good name, did a lot of things for a lot of people. And I hit a point to where like, okay, I'm at a point in my life where physically, mentally, maybe I'm starting to enter a peak phase. Whether that peak lasts for 5, 6, 7 years, who knows?
How old are you right now?
I'm 27.
Okay, yeah.
So
that's you're right. You're right in the thick of it.
It's a good age, right? And it's like one of those ages where you're not too old, but it's like one of those ages where it's like if you don't start now, you'll
creep it up.
Yeah, it'll creep up.
I turned 30 last month, and I'm like, fuck, my fingers are broken, my knees hurt, my fucking I feel it.
You hold it great though. You look young as hell.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
absolutely, man.
Well, like in reality, 30 is still young as hell.
For sure, no doubt.
Yeah, it's
no
like,
doubt.
But my buddy had a joke when he turned 30. He's like, everyone's like, oh, you look great. It's like, of course I look great. I'm fucking 30. That's true. I didn't turn 50. Yeah, but it's just the major difference for me is like when I was like 21 or 22, I could train hard every single day, and you're just like basically Wolverine. You just heal with doing nothing.
True.
Now I just have to have a recovery practice in conjunction with my normal training.
I see a lot of what you do. That's awesome.
Yeah, I do like yoga and stuff. That's like been the biggest help for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
You're extremely flexible. Do you anything on like what do you do for do you have a recovery routine? I'm assuming you do. You train like a fucking animal.
Thank you. Yeah, I would say so. When it comes to my mobility, it helps because a lot of my exercises within the gym accomplish both strength and length. So what I do for strength also coincides with what I do for being mobile. And so a lot of my like flexibility in my hips and my legs and my shoulders or what have you has come from the way that I actually train now.
Really?
Not necessarily from the heavy squats and deadlifts and pressing, but more so from the accessory work that allows me to continue to do those pain-free for the most part. And do both like two sports at a high level, train at New Wave, compete. The powerlifting meet I'm doing in 10 weeks is known as like the Super Bowl of powerlifting. So it's a pretty big meet.
Yeah.
So, to do both at a respectfully high level, there's a recovery routine. And I do some of my own stretching now. I never was into that until just recently, but a lot of my recovery routine just comes from, in my opinion, being very durable due to what I do in the gym. So a lot of times people don't give enough credit that recovery, yes, is done with what you do outside of the gym, but it also can coincide with what you do inside of the gym in the sense that, like, if you build durability within what you do in the gym, you're not necessarily tearing your body down as much. In fact, you're building it up to a point to where it can take more pounding or take more beating, and you can recover from that faster because your muscles are already pre-prepared for that. So when I'm doing really heavy, say split squats with like my hip flexor being really lengthened, or say just bottomless ass to grass squats, like preparing my body for any given like angle, like lengthening and shortening, just basically the term is general physical preparedness. Preparing your body for any given thing, whether that's powerlifting or jujitsu or flexibility, like that's the main goal of my training is to raise that bar. So GPP.
Okay.
With general physical preparedness rising, my powerlifting rises a little bit, my mobility, my conditioning, my athleticism, and all of that kind of accumulates.
So like what exactly is that? Is that like the routine before you start lifting? That's like the specific lifting routines, or like what exactly does that look like?
So for example, let's say like for right now, I'm in a powerlifting prep, so I got to prioritize squat, bench, and deadlift. Hit those movements first. After those are completed, that's when I put a lot of focus on the exercises that are going to take those target muscle groups, chest, shoulders, back, quads, hamstrings, glutes, and work on not only strengthening those in isolation, but also strengthening while simultaneously lengthening them. And that comes from understanding how to accomplish full range of motion of that specific muscle group so that over time, through the resistance and the adaptation that your body goes through because of the stimulus that the weight gives, you actually build mobility while also simultaneously getting stronger. So for example, a lot of people think mobility comes from stretching. It does. However, I have actually experienced faster results and, in my opinion, better results by also simultaneously weighing a lot of these stretches. For example, let's say you get to a point to where you can do splits like body weight relatively, and you
splits,
just regular
legs,
splits.
outwards.
Let's say you get to that point. At a certain point, that kind of becomes your baseline, but you can actually take that split position and work on actually strengthening the muscles when they're in extreme length like that by just putting on basic load and then progressively adding to that over time. Like you may have seen videos, I know I've seen them where somebody's doing the splits, but they're also simultaneously like holding a kettlebell or like
have you seen that Juju Mufu guy?
Yeah, where he's like
he'll do like crazy mobility stuff.
Yeah. And so what that says is that he's obviously extremely flexible. But on top of that, he's extremely mobile because mobility and flexibility, the main difference to me is that mobility means that you're able to move, but you have strength within any given position. So for somebody like him, he's extremely mobile and he displays it because not only can he get into these very in-range positions, but he's also able to bear load in them, which is a whole nother level.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what a lot of my training is based around is lengthening the muscle first, getting to the position to where I can even accomplish a specific range of motion. But once I get to the point to where, okay, now I can split a little bit more. I can do this a little bit better. Now we add load to that so that the muscle is forced to continue to grow and strengthen. So let's say, for example, for jiu-jitsu, I've seen a lot of people where they are very flexible. Like maybe they let themselves get stacked in guard because they know they can kind of invert out of it and they get comfortable in that position. Over time, because naturally you're like bearing somebody's load with your spine in extreme flexion and you're rounded, that can cause wear and tear if you're not like either careful or good with your technique, or if the other person's just so big and they just kind of crush you, right? The difference between flexibility and mobility in that case is now having exercises within your strength training program that replicate that of a stacked or inverted position. So not only are you able to get there, like you're able to get into that bended position, but you're also able to bear a lot of load there. So not only are you able to do it, but you're also more protected if something goes wrong. And that's where the majority of my training is based on. Between like the majority of questions I get It's like, how do you balance really heavy lifting, training really high level jujitsu? I'm not saying I'm high level. I'm saying the people I train with are high level, right? So it's very intense. And then on top of that, something as pounding as pro wrestling. So how do you balance all of that? The recovery process for sure. The sleep is key. The diet is key. Any modalities that you have outside of that, whether that's cold plunge, sauna, stretching, whatever the case may be, that's awesome. Supplementation, you know, like not steroids, but like supplementation.
Trying to see.
Yeah. Trying to see. Cheers. Yeah. But whatever you do outside of that is all great. But also in your training, there's a way to not have your lifting just tear you down. You can actually use it to build up. And that's where, in my opinion, because I've been lifting for so long since I was 5, where I don't have really any injuries or really any nagging pains that prevent me from doing the 3 different things I'm pursuing. That's like the biggest thing, really.
Interesting. So like for me, like used like the split example and then adding weight from there, getting to the splits in the first place is one of the more difficult parts or places that no one ever gets to in the first place. Are you like weight loading on the way to there, or are you just saying you get to a certain point of flexibility and then start weight loading from there?
So there's tons of ways that you can do it. So you can start by reducing weight. So it's all about regression. The term regression is something I use just religiously with the majority of my clients. Regression. Because if somebody wants to... What
does that mean?
Regression is basically in lifting, in a lifting sense, is let's say a split. A split is like all the way down the middle or through the front.
Yeah.
You take that, if somebody's 200 pounds, they can do the splits. Well, that's 200 pounds of lows while their adductors are lengthened to that degree. But if they can't do the splits, then you need to take that 200 pounds of body weight and regress that to some degree. Whether that's using something like a table to take weight off of your body so that your adductors are experiencing less of your overall body weight. Okay. Or even just having like a spot underneath your crotch to be able to keep you from going all the way down, but you're still bringing the adductors to a length that's going to cause a stimulus to gain flexibility.
So you're saying like you're trying to flex, but also trying to stretch, but also trying to flex. Is that the like idea behind it?
That's what you do within it. But what I'm saying is, if somebody can't accomplish the splits, you get to that position to the best degree, or you could break it down.
Whatever closest they can get to.
Correct. Yeah. And like literally speaking, if I'm working splits, like legitimate splits, I might just brace on this table and then basically like kind of lay into my body weight. Yeah, and hold that, and then try to accumulate what's said to be about 5 minutes a week in that position, whether that's 5 minutes all at once or 5 minutes spread out across the week. That's
1 minute, 5 days.
That's generally a good goal to kind of go for. And through that, you progressively make it a little bit harder, whether that's taking a little bit of weight off your hands or getting a little bit lower, like whether the spots underneath you, whatever the case may be, or you individually work each adductor. So you have specific stretches that aren't literally the splits, but you have stretches that kind of lengthen each given adductor or each given hip flexor that allows for that split to happen over time. You know,
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and regression and lifting. Let's compare it to. Are you familiar with what a Nordic curl is?
Yeah, where you like go down forwards and you're curling back with your hamstrings. Yeah.
So regression is something like that would be regressing the range of motion, so that if you can't do your full body weight all the way down, all the way up, you regress the range of motion by putting something like a box in front of you. So you're doing partials.
Oh, okay. So you're not going all the way down.
Right. And over time, you'd assume that process allows you to go a little bit lower and then come up and then eventually get down. Another way you can do that is tie a band to yourself that regresses your overall body weight. So the band obviously assists you, but it also allows you to accomplish full range of motion going down and coming up.
You're just it's a lighter range of motion.
Yeah, exactly. So regression doesn't necessarily mean one thing. It's just making the exercise achievable so that you can eventually build up to that standard body weight or what have you, whatever the case may be. And a lot of that is also put into play when it comes to injury rehab too. I did a lot of these regression concepts when it comes to rehabbing my knee, the knee injury that I had.
So what happened to the knee?
Yeah, so basically when I was training with my good friend Austin,
we were absolute unit as well. Yeah. Which, by the way, you're an absolute. Do you think a little tangent here? But you think it was some sort of divine plan to give you the last name House, because you are an absolute fucking unit,
bro.
My
I
friend.
Appreciate it, bro. Thank you. Yeah, that was. I think I don't know. Maybe that has something to do with the purpose I have in life. But the House thing was completely.
All you need is like the middle name Brick Shit. And then
Thank you. I appreciate that, man. Thank you. So basically the situation with that was Austin was training for Nogi Worlds, and he and I were training pretty much almost daily except Sundays, and we were the last week before he was headed to Worlds, and the whole camp went completely fine. We were doing takedowns every day, going hard every single day, like hard 10-minute rounds, and it was fine. And this is something that I always say is like every time I've gotten a serious injury, knock on wood, has been when the person announces like, all right, one more round or last round.
Oh no.
And I'm like, yeah. And I go into it, it's all normal, and then something crazy happens. But
oh no.
Yeah.
That's how I tore my groin about 2 months ago. And it was the same thing. I'm like, I had great rounds. It was an open mat, like 2 hours. I think I did like 12 rounds already. And I was like, okay, I was gonna leave. And then someone was like, you wanna roll? I'm like, yeah, okay, we'll do last one. We do it. I fucking tear my groin.
Yeah.
Like 5 days before ADCC Costa Mesa too.
Yeah.
So it was just
I remember you posting about that.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing. It was literally last round.
I don't know why it happens.
Maybe that's
like
it.
that.
Got to cut it off early.
Yeah, literally.
Or just fucking turtle.
Yeah, I don't know why it's that way, but so it was the last round of the day, and then we kind of scrambled up to the feet, and then he set up a really good, I forgot what the judo name is. I think it's called Tanatoshi or something like that. I could be wrong, but he set it up pretty well. Like he pulled me, my foot stepped, all my weight was on that one leg. So if things had gone better, he would have had a really clean takedown. It's just unfortunately when he went for it, instead of coming down to my ankle to trip me, him being up here and me being not so up there height-wise, he came into the side of my knee, and that's where my PCL fully tore, my ACL partially tore, my MCL tore in 3 separate places partially, and then I somehow fractured my femur in that. He like came into the side. Wow. Yeah. He came
Femur's
into
the big one, right?
Yeah, the femur is the one that is
connects the knee to
thigh,
the hip.
the thigh, basically. Yeah.
Wow.
And so it wasn't like a big fracture, I assume, but like something cracked, I guess, from the land. So he came into the side. That's where I felt a couple pops. And then the biggest one was when we both like landed. You'll have to like plug in a video of the injury. Was where we both landed, and his body weight came down on my knee as we both like landed on the ground, and that's where I felt my MCL pop. So it was like a double whammy. Yeah.
So basically, like what, 3 different tendons in your leg plus a partial crack in your femur.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And if you play the video, there's like, I scream like a little bitch. I'm like screaming. I'm like,
I've seen it before. Yeah, that's a fucking rough injury.
It was more than anything. What I try to tell people while I was feeling that moment was literally seeing my entire like life and athletic endeavors and everything just flash before my eyes. Yeah, I like truly thought, because Austin's, as you said, he's a brick shit house as well. Yeah. He's huge, and so I'm thinking to myself, like, if he at 270 throws himself into my knee and I hear 3 separate pops, like, and we both land on it with body weight and gravity, I thought, like, there's no way I'm coming out of this. Like, because for example, I was wrestling with my best friend a few years back, and I took a simple double leg, and I tried to cut him down. And when I went to cut him down, his foot got caught in the mat, and I twisted
the pressure
his knee.
on the knee.
Yeah, and so he tore his ACL and lateral meniscus. But when he tried to stand up, though, he immediately collapsed. And of course, he had to get surgery and everything. When Austin stood me up and he's like, all right, I'm going to take my hands off now, like, I could actually, like, stabilize single leg on my leg. I couldn't believe it.
Maybe it's because just those fucking thighs.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, actual strength in the leg. Yeah, you think that's what it is?
That's what I was thinking. And another thing.
Could be.
And
you've got some fucking monster thighs.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Have you ever taken a diameter of this?
Not since, like, I was, like, 21. I was, like, really into that. No.
Okay, wow.
No.
You got to have, like, change your Instagram handle to best thighs in the game.
No.
Or make a video of, like, crushing a watermelon or something.
I'll have to do that, yeah. No, I stopped measuring parts of my body when I realized that the more you measure
my penis was only 3 inches.
Yeah. The thing is, like, it just doesn't grow. So I'm like, I'm just gonna throw this tape away. So now to tie in the two conversations. Prior to that, you're probably familiar with like knees over toes guy.
Yeah, so, I've seen you with him a few times. That's fucking badass.
Yes, he's a friend of mine, and before he was a friend of mine, I really dove deep down that rabbit hole because his main thing is, you can heal yourself and you can rehab yourself without needing surgery, without needing painkillers, all the general things that you're generally suggested to have by your medical professional. And so I dove down that rabbit hole, and I pretty much perfected damn near every single movement. And literally speaking, the Nordic curl, I did my first bodyweight Nordic curl the day before I got hurt.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Wait, like you did it like full range of motion, you're saying?
Yeah.
And so you finally got to that milestone and then fucking fucked up your knee.
The knee. So, wow. And my thing with that is like, sometimes people be like, well, you did all that work for your knees, you still got hurt. It's like, well, yes. If you took a shotgun and pointed at my knee, you could probably blow it out.
No matter what you
know?
did. Yeah.
But in that particular case, my thing was, okay, I did probably about like a year and a half of like knees over toes work. At first, it started really rough, and then it got really, really good at the end. I had great mobility in my ankles.
This is after the injury.
Leading
Prior
up to it.
Okay, yeah.
So, and I got great ankle mobility, great hip mobility. Like everything was just on another level. I felt more athletic than ever. And then the injury happened. And so the reason why I'm saying this is because you see something like that. And again, I thought I was done, like for sure. Like I thought immediate surgery. I was imagining the complications that would happen after surgery. And my belief is the time that I invested into all those specific movements allowed me to bounce back like I did without surgery, without painkillers, without steroids, without peptides, without stem cells.
So you didn't have surgery, nothing like that?
No.
Wow. And so do you take like an MRI after that or something?
Yeah, and that's where...
so it confirms all like complete tears, all this stuff?
Yeah, so that's where I got those specific results.
Wow.
And
it was... like MRIs? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, and then just through... knees over toes stuff and additional mobility training.
Yes, so that's a big rabbit hole. I'm sure we got time. So yeah. I did video. If you're familiar with Mark Bell, look up Mark Bell's YouTube channel. I did like a full video where I basically talked about each segment of rehab that I did. But yes, it started with knees over toe training. That was like my foundation. So as soon as I hurt my knee, day 2, I was already walking backwards in my brace. Day 3, I was like weightless on a sled walking backwards, and I built that up. Walking backwards is one of the best things that you can do for overall knee health, and anybody can do it for the most part.
Yeah.
So then after that, I started running into a few roadblocks, like certain movements in the knees over toes program weren't necessarily progressing as fast as I would have liked. So then I had a few mentors along the way that have experience in different fields, say like more isometric or banded type rehab. So I added elements of that in. I added other elements of like more athletic style rehab, specifically that like MMA fighters do. My friend Phil DeRue in Florida showed me some things. And then something as simple as actually just in our recovery conversation, just digging into the scar tissue helped a lot.
Oh, wow. With like those like scrapes things?
Yeah, not even that. Literally just a lacrosse ball.
Oh, wow.
And so the reason why I even did that in the first place is because I made a ton of progress at the beginning. Like I hurt my knee, and then by week 5, I was deadlifting 600 again.
Wow.
But there was certain things, say like a Nordic curl or say like a full split squat with my knee fully bended, that was taking a little bit. And so that's when like maybe halfway through I was like, oh, maybe I'm going to need surgery. Because like it was progressing in some areas, but not so much in others. When I tried a Nordic curl, there was a very strong pinch right behind my knee that just wasn't letting me go down.
Wow.
And no matter how high my frequency was at those 2-3 times a week, it just wasn't progressing like the other things were. And then eventually like I feel it behind my knee, and I'm like, damn, there's a lot back there going on. So then I just had my girlfriend and myself, we just like dig into it every night. And I noticed just that within a week, just my progress shot up like drastically.
Oh, wow. With the Nordic curl.
Yeah, with the Nordic curl specifically. I think it has to do with where my PCL tore. Wow. So just myofascial release was huge too.
How interesting. And do you think in 6 weeks later, you're deadlifting 500, you said? 600?
Yeah.
And so do you think like tendons are fully healed by at that point, or how does...
I think that certain movements like deadlift don't put as much on the tendons and joints as say something like a squat. So for example,
so maybe you wouldn't be squatting by that much, or you know.
I can't give you my specific timeline, but yeah, like 5 weeks in, I was pulling 600, and then after pulling 600, that's when I started squatting again. And I would say like week 12 or so is when I was probably like in the 3s, getting closer to the 4s, like squatting for like single reps, like tempo reps. And then the next 6 or so weeks is when that was like shortly after I moved. So then like by month 5 or 6 was when I pulled 800 deadlift. But now my squat strength has come up close to where it was. So for example, when I started squatting again, like 375 was pretty rough for me. Whereas like the best I've ever squatted in the past was like 715 with just knee sleeves.
Okay.
Now though, like more recently, I'm repping 550 pretty easily, and my knee's holding up pretty good, going at a very low depth. So the squats taken a little bit because I think it's taken time for my body and everything to adapt to the heavier load and like progress that properly. But
it just maybe puts more pressure on those specific tendons.
Yeah, that's a process where I definitely need to and wanted to take slower because of how the weight's loaded on the joint, especially when you're going down deep in a squat with heavy weight and you're more likely to cave in or have that knee valgus that everyone talks about. Yeah. That's where I wanted to be very particular about how I progress that. Thankfully, though, knock on wood, I'm at a point now to where like I'm getting close to 600 again. So that's like a 3 times body weight squat. And things are coming together. But I came through a lot of patience and like just investing into those movements, those rehab or those recovery movements that I talked about, those accessory movements that allow you to be more durable. Like the majority of my training was the mobility type stuff, like the stuff that allows you to build the durability so you can get to that point again.
Wow.
And then now transitioning into more heavier weight. So
interesting. So what's your daily routine like? So I know it's probably changed or evolved over like having specific injuries and now training for different things. But what's your, like, you wake up and how many times a day do you train, or what's your typical day like?
So in Arizona, it's a lot different than it was in Texas. And that's because my schedule in Texas is kind of based around when New Wave trains.
Okay.
So my regular schedule during the week would be I train Marigali in the morning, and then I either train a client or two after him, and then I'll get ready for the afternoon session.
That's every day?
Monday through Friday generally, and if it's not Marigali, I have somebody else. And then on the
that's sick by itself.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, that's a pretty A-list client to have.
It's an honor for sure.
In the jiu-jitsu world, for sure.
Yeah, it is an honor. We can dive into that. So I'll train him in the morning, train another couple of clients, get ready for the afternoon session that starts at 3. Depending upon what I need to do lifting wise, I may do like a upper body accessory day afterwards. But if it's a very heavy day that I need my energy for, I'll dedicate that day to just lifting now. So I might alternate between jiu-jitsu focus days and lifting focus days. Back in Arizona, though, when I wasn't necessarily preparing for powerlifting competitions, I would combine the two, do my lifting in the morning and then train with like Austin or whatever later in the day type of thing.
Okay.
But and also it's kind of the time where the afternoon practices is a little bit awkward. It's like right dead center in the middle. So it's like training beforehand can kind of affect my performance in hand, and then like training afterwards, I'm pretty drained. So like I'm definitely not deadlifting as much as I need to.
Whichever is the second one, you're not going to get as good of a workout.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they do have morning sessions, but that's usually when I have clients. So I just kind of make it work. So my lifting frequency has actually gone down a little bit, 3 to 4. Try to get solid sessions a week.
Okay.
Jiu-jitsu wise.
So you'll prioritize one or the other so you get a full workout on whatever you're looking to.
Yeah, man. Because when I first moved here, I tried to do both. And naturally my performance in one or the other had to sacrifice.
Yeah.
And the reason why my performance in lifting right now is of the priority is because I need my variables, energy being one of them, being consistent in my training so that I can properly progress myself leading into the competition. You know, I need consistency in my energy expenditure for my heavy days, like that's a heavy squat day, heavy deadlift day. I need to make sure those are consistent.
Yeah,
the other days, though, not necessarily as big. So if I do jiu-jitsu and then head to the gym right after, then I'll make it work. But that's my ideal right now.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty solid. So is it just one a day then, or you're doing both sometimes?
Sometimes both. I probably say like I'll do both 2 times a week, and then the other days I'll have them separated. Yeah.
Wow. And you keep a pretty strict diet throughout this as well?
Yeah. Mostly just ground beef and fruit and either potatoes or rice. Yeah, that's basically what I eat every day for the most part. So
wow. Wow. So what was the original thing? So I know you're very multifaceted at this stage. You're jiu-jitsu black belt, powerlifting, animal, and now pro wrestling. What was the first thing? What did you in high school? Did you play sports in high school?
Yeah, I wrestled in high school.
Okay,
and then
nice.
My senior year is when I did my first bodybuilding show while I was training for wrestling. And then after high school, that's when I got straight into powerlifting. And then after powerlifting for a few years, that's when I started jiu-jitsu. I did jiu-jitsu and powerlifting, and then I did another bodybuilding show, and then since then I've been more so on the side of like trying to at least like I build up a body work that can do a few different things, so I try to maximize that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And you had like a weight loss journey earlier in that too,
right?
That's
actually why I started jiu-jitsu.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So when I powerlifted so in high school I wrestled at 195. And then I would hold 200 to 205 if it wasn't in the season. And then afterwards, when I started powerlifting, my first competition was 198. And then the relationship I was in at the time, combined with not doing anything cardio intensive, combined with like eating out and eating like shit every single day, like multiple times a day.
Yeah.
I went from 198 to 270. Like,
oh, wow.
Yeah, like fat. At 5'9".
Oh, wow.
Yeah, at 5'9", mind you, too. So yeah, like I could move weight, but it was just not a good look for me for sure.
Yeah, that's thick bodied.
Yeah, man, it's not. And you know, for me, I pride myself in my ability to be athletic and everything. And I remember looking myself in the mirror one day. I just saw I lost all of that. It was definitely like a turning point.
Lost your athleticism?
Yeah, maybe I'm sure I was pretty athletic for a 270-pound powerlifter, but like where I pride myself now, like I definitely wasn't there, you know. So, and the thing that made me realize that was I was invited to go back to my high school wrestling room to mess around a little bit, and then the next day I woke up, all my joints were just aching, like it was like I was 80 years old. It felt really bad. So that, and I was only 20 at the time. So experiencing that, I was like, dude, I need to make a change. Like this is not okay. Like I was just chasing numbers, and before I knew it, the numbers on the scale were going up too. It just wasn't a good thing.
Yeah.
So then at that point, that's when I was like, okay, well, you know, I'm not wrestling anymore. I decided not wrestle in college, and bodybuilding cardio is just not my forte. I just don't really care for it. Like I feel like
bodybuilding cardio, what
your traditional like incline treadmill or stairmaster or whatever, just not my thing. It's too boring for me, and I'd rather simultaneously build a skill if I'm going to do something cardio intensive.
So got into jiu-jitsu?
Yeah. So basically the story with that was, okay, like, all right, I'm going to sign up for an adult wrestling tournament, and I'm going to sign up for 220. So then I'm forced to get down to 220 by this date. So I lost.
And this was when you were 270.
Yeah, when I was 270. And then that was one of the ways where, for me, like if I put my name on something, it makes dieting and being consistent much easier.
Yeah.
Because I'm holding.
You've got a goal.
Yeah.
And a specific deadline.
Yeah. My pride's on the line here, you know?
Yeah.
So, and in that process, when I was going to a couple different high school wrestling rooms where my friends were coaching, their spring break, the rooms were closed. So then I had to find something to stay on the mat. So I was like, I don't care what it is at this point. I'll do jiu-jitsu. So then I hit up one of my friends that was working and training at the school that I used to go to back in Arizona. And he invited me to class, and then I did my first class, and I did halfway good. And I was like, you know what, maybe like this is like my next thing. And then from there on out, it ended up being my next thing. And
wow. And you wrestled for all 4 years of high school prior to that? Did you wrestle before high school?
I did 1 year in one season in middle school.
Okay, so you had essentially maybe 5 seasons of wrestling before jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I got hurt my sophomore year. I only wrestled like 5 matches, but I'd probably say about like four to like 3.5.
Okay,
yeah.
Wow. Huh. So that is a solid background, because I know you also had a very fast progression from white belt to black belt.
Yeah.
Or at least white to brown especially, right? Yeah, I know there were, what was it, like 2.5 years or something? Which is extremely quick.
It is, yeah.
So probably wrestling was a huge part of that.
Yeah, you know, I would say the wrestling, and I always talk about this when it comes to belts. I talk about this on Mark Belt. Belts are representative of, obviously, the relationship between the instructor and the student, and it's also a representative of the ecosystem that you lie within. So, you know, a black belt at this school is not necessarily a black belt at the next school.
That's for sure.
And that's where we've seen that belts matter less and less and less and less, especially as ADCC gets more popular and you start to see blues and purples just beat black belts that are established.
Yeah. Well, and like Danaher, who you're training under now, like he won't give you a fucking purple belt until you like medal in ADCC.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Essentially, so, like, you know,
Nicky Rod, man. It's true.
Medaled at blue belt, right? Yeah.
And now training with those guys, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Just different ecosystems.
It's very subjective.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily mean the ecosystem you're within is right or wrong. It just means that like you're being graded based upon, you know, what you're in. It's really simple. But you know, for those guys with John, you have standards of Gordon Ryan and John Carlo and Luke and Nick and Dan and all these people, Gary Tonin. So it's like, naturally, like the standard is naturally higher because, well, if this is a standard black belt, then you'd expect everybody that follows underneath them to strive for at least similar to that same standard. So, you know, at that point now, it's like and the thing is too, there's people that have been with John for a long time, like since they started, that understand his system, his curriculum, that are probably blue belts that know more than I do, to be quite honest with you. And rolling
like
with
ranked blue belts that are like high level.
Yeah, I mean, there's girls in there that know more than me for sure. You know, you know, when I'm listening in class and trying to absorb these concepts and everything, I realize how much I don't know, which is always a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time too, it's like, okay, so then I'm rolling with, you know, purple belts and stuff like that. I'm like, damn, you know what? Like these purple belts are fucking me up. Yeah. And I need to be better. Yeah. So at the same time too, it's cool because going there has been a bit of a restart in the sense that like it's like, okay, I'm in a new place, I'm with new people under a new coach. So now I have an opportunity to basically just restart entirely and take in jiu-jitsu in this given environment and see what it does for my own personal growth. Wow. And, you know, I'm in a place now where, yes, I got promoted very fast. I know there's a lot of hate for me getting promoted pretty fast. I'm also in a place where I'm confident enough to be like, I think the people that were hating on me wouldn't enjoy rolling with me. But at the same time too, I'm also humble enough to admit that like on my current team, like I'm nowhere near the black belt level, a brown belt level even, you know. So
by John's standards.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's
and also too, a lot of people take, you know, the average I think is 10 or 12 years to get to black belt. Well, the average person doesn't train twice a day, 7 days a week. And so that's a massive factor as well.
Exactly.
Also had, you know, 5 seasons or 3.5, 4 seasons of wrestling prior to that. All of those have massive factors.
Exactly.
It's like the brand new white belt that comes in that, you know, was a collegiate wrestler. He's really not a white belt in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
You know, he has a massive grappling experience, like literally years at a high level. It means a lot.
Right. And to touch on that point, so yeah, the wrestling helped a lot, and I did pretty well in high school. Like my senior year, I was coming in ranked number 1 in the state, and I was injured actually before state my senior year, but the 6th through 2nd place was on the podium. I had all beat. The only person I didn't beat or I didn't go against was the guy that won it. So I was 1 or 2 by the end of my senior year if I was healthy.
Yeah, so a very high level wrestler before even starting jiu-jitsu.
Right, as high level as you can be here in Arizona.
Yeah.
Since then, I trained with a lot of my actually NCAA wrestling qualifier friends, and they've helped bring my game up even more so. So my wrestling has evolved even more, even since high school. But yeah, you know, that complemented with training twice a day and then teaching full time, and then you know, making trips specifically to train with Atos or New Wave or all these different teams and stuff, and exposing myself, or all the cross training that I did, all those things add up, you know. So it's not even that like, oh, I'm a shitty black belt. It's just there's levels to this, and that's the case with everything. You know what I mean?
Truth. Yeah.
And what I can say is like sometimes people ask like, well, how do you think so would do against like so and so from New Wave? And you know, I try to be nice and nice about it, but it's like, I don't think you understand, because you wouldn't be able to understand unless you felt it, unless you like, because it's like
we're also talking about 1% of 1% in the world.
Yeah,
is who's in that room.
Right, exactly, and that's what from a viewer standpoint, like, you know that they're the best because they win, but you don't understand like exactly what level they're at to make their best beat the other best, but make the other best look like they just started. Like if you think about
like Gordon's success.
Yeah, Gordon versus Galvao, it's like, damn, dude, he made him look like he didn't even know what he was doing. But to make Galvao a legend, to make him look like that, I can't even fathom. I'm there, but most people can't fathom the level that Gordon has to be at to accomplish that, you know?
Yeah.
So
it's incredibly impressive.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what I tell people. It's just hard to explain unless you're in there daily and unless you like feel it for yourself, and then you can like compare to the best people in Arizona or whatever state you're from, and then roll with some of these guys. Like it's eye opening for sure.
Yeah. And you know, also too, part of what makes you a good jiu-jitsu practitioner, like you specifically, and then also too probably good in everything you do in your life, is the fact that you're out seeking opportunities to learn and become better at all stages of it. You know, you're going to all these different places, trying to become better. You know, a good black belt is someone who always maintains that white belt mentality of, I don't really know that much. And you touched on it to like, you know, there's purple belts that might know more, or you're going in a new environment. And John has a really unique teaching style. I've seen just from his instructionals, but he's so philosophical about all of his points. So what's it? I mean, that's really interesting. What's like a main difference the way like John teaches comparatively to other or most people?
So I would say I'll just talk about what I really like about what he does. So basic class starts with no warm up, so that's awesome.
Yeah,
like no rolls, no break falls, any of that. So that's awesome. I feel like the entire class is geared towards the people's goals that are in there. So everybody that's in there has competitive goals. So that's what the entire class is generally built around. So we start with some sort of standing sequence. And the first move within that standing sequence is kind of light. So it kind of gets you warmed up, but it acts like a warm up, but you're still like learning something that's applicable to what you're going to need to know in competition or what have you. And then that sequence builds.
Do you have like an example of like what that would be? Like?
Let's say like he teaches like a basic like arm drag to the back type thing with like a foot trip or something like that. So it's like no one's getting slammed or no one's doing hard takedowns, but it's like
doing suplexes or double legs, but some sort of like entry into a takedown.
Like you're practicing a legitimate technique that works, but it's not like high impact.
Yeah.
And then by the time the first drill's over, you're breaking a sweat a little bit. Now you're ready to do maybe actual takedowns or whatever.
Okay.
And so let's say, for example, he teaches like some type of foot sweep that leads into a head snap. He teaches a foot sweep to the head snap, boom. Okay, we practice that. That leads into that head snap, bringing the person down, getting around to the back. Okay, if getting around to the back doesn't work and they do this, then it's that option. So the thing that I really like about his classes is that he sequences his techniques based off of failure from the last one, or like these what if scenarios. Like, okay, this is what you do when they do this, or this is what you do if you fail in doing this. When they defend this, their head naturally drops in this position, so then you have this now available. And that's, in my opinion, one of the reasons why they're so good is because A, they have the training partners, and B, if you're there consistent enough, long enough, you're given this answer key.
Wow.
Where I can hold my own against certain people for a certain amount of time because of my athleticism, my instincts, the jujitsu that I've done for myself up to this point. But at a certain point, when I break, I can feel where their brain is working at such a high pace that I'm keeping up with them, maybe move for move, and then it's maybe somewhere in that sequence, like 3, 4, that they beat me because they had the next answer, and then it just builds, and I'm still down here, you know?
Interesting. So maybe it's like, here's goal A. This is how you do A. When A fails, so this is how you do A. Like, you complete A to completion. Then when A fails, here's B.
Right.
Complete B to completion. When B fails, now you have C, and then just continue on.
Exactly. And the way he teaches kind of drills the mindset for the best guys where, let's say like I do a move against somebody here back home, like in training before I went there. I would go for a move, and if I failed, like in my head, I'm like, damn it. All right, try again.
Yeah. Same move.
Yeah, with them, it's like this fails, like they don't even think about it as a failure. Just, oh, well, the next thing and the next thing. Like their brain never registers failure. It's just the next thing. That's why you see like Nick's pace is so high and so good because he goes for one thing and then it fails and he goes to the next. Like it's never like, oh, this Jimmy guy got out of my arm drag. Okay, defend my arm drag. Now I'm on his head type of thing. That's
okay. And interesting.
So that's kind of how he teaches.
Well, often like failures will open up other opportunities. So
right.
if it's like an arm drag from guard, and then he sticks up his leg, and so now there's limb extension. You could go to the leg. Sort of progressions like that.
And let's say like your really good practitioner has like their first 2 to 3 options. I would say like where the next level of practitioner is. Not that I have statistics, but let's say they have their options: normal person 3. 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. Like they don't their options don't stop, and their brain doesn't hit a stopping point. Like for example, now one of my critiques for myself is like, okay, I'm starting to understand second and third options pretty good, but if I'm going against a Nick or a Luke or Gordon and Giancarlo, they're gonna stop my first 3 guaranteed. But then I hit that point like, okay, well, now I just don't know what to do. Like you stopped all 3. Not only am I defeated mentally, but I don't know what to do. So that's like my next kind of thing where it's like, okay, I just need to keep gathering knowledge, gathering technique, and understand what comes in the sequence next. And so to answer the first question, that's why I like how John teaches, because it's in sequence. So if you're there long enough and you can see the repetition and what he's teaching, you start to really absorb it. And even coming back here and rolling with some of the guys back home, I've been able to apply some of these concepts, and I've had some mental breakthroughs since I've rolled here in Arizona. So that's been nice.
Wow.
And then he'll go down to ground and do the same thing, some ground sequence, and do that same type of thing.
Wow.
And then after that, we take a quick water break, and then we start with positional sparring, usually mount, turtle, back, some either 50-50 or cross ashi, and then maybe something specific to what we learned, and then we'll do 1 or 2 open rounds that are specific to whatever tournament's coming up for whoever.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Wow. So the last, like all the live rolling is maybe a majority positional?
Yeah. And so I talked about this to Mark Bell. It's their schedule, like if I'm Gordon or Dan or Giancarlo and I'm one of the main guys, like they're training morning, afternoon, and then most of them lift afterwards. So they're doing their morning pro session, their afternoon pro session, some lifts, and then a lot of them actually teach class at night. So the main question that a lot of them get is like, are you going 100% every time, or like how do you not get injured, or how do you consistently and like most people think, oh, these people are just built different, and it's to some degree, yes. But also, I think a lot of that comes to the point that a lot of the live is positional. So the opportunities for injury and the overall like pounding that you go through, like say in guard passing or takedowns, that's mitigated to just 1 or 2 rounds.
Oh, interesting.
And I think that's like something where, okay, they're doing the most common positions in jiu-jitsu, but they're not doing all the dirty work to get there all the time. So they're kind of like letting their bodies recover because they're not doing full rounds just all the time.
Interesting. And the warm up is sort of takedown. So you're always getting those like maybe high impact, or you're getting those drills of like what the high impact technique is without the actual high impact.
You're getting those reps in. Exactly. Yeah. And that's something I main takeaway. A lot of jiu-jitsu schools just don't really put that much energy into like takedowns, you know?
Wow.
So,
you made an interesting point about like the sequences, about how, if option A doesn't work, B, C, D, E, F, and continues on, and the highest level guys have these different answers for every different position. It's like I've thought about this recently, that there's that Bruce Lee quote, I think it is who it is, who's like, I don't fear the man who's done 10,000 kicks. I fear the guy who's done one kick 10,000 times.
Right.
It's not really applicable to jiu-jitsu.
I mean,
if you do one technique a million times,
it's hard,
you're not going to be good.
There's a million techniques. Like, I would say, like, I'm not a kicking expert, but there's probably less kicks than there are jiu-jitsu techniques.
Yeah, you know? Yeah, exactly. And I was thinking about that too, because it's like, one really solid kick can maybe break through a guard, or like you're still going to hurt someone no matter what. Like if you just only have like, say, a really good butterfly half, what if they just avoid that position? Right. You just don't get the opportunity to do it. So I don't know. It's not really as applicable to jiu-jitsu. You almost have to be multifaceted. You have to be dangerous from everywhere.
And to that point, what I will say is that the guys on New Wave, I'm the only one there that I think actually has wrestling experience, but they're wrestling.
Like formal wrestling experience, like in a wrestling gym.
Yeah, there's a couple people that are not like the main ADCC guys that have wrestled to some degree, but none of the main guys ever have like in formal wrestling, to my knowledge.
They started with jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, but what I will say to that though is that they're by far the best jiu-jitsu wrestlers that I've ever like gone against. To where like, again, I've trained with NCAA qualifiers, and I've wrestled with like some of the top nations wrestlers, and from a defensive standpoint, at least, these guys are just as tough as these people that I've wrestled with that have qualified for NCAAs in a high regard. Yeah. Like, they may not be making super slick takedowns, like, misdirection type single legs and shit like a wrestler does, but their defense is like solid. And their fundamentals are solid, to where, like, from an offensive standpoint, for me, I have to tie together 2 or 3 different moves to be able to get in on a leg type of thing. Like, I'm not just like blasting through people like I'm used to. Like, their defense and understanding of what to do on the feet is very good. And it comes to how John teaches too. And to my knowledge, he never did any wrestling or anything like that. But what he does is literally just study high level wrestling and then just basically absorbs it. And since he can articulate things well, he just teaches it, and when you see him teach it, actually, like, he moves as if he did wrestle. Like, he moves great, but he never actually like wrestled before. He just studies the best wrestling that's currently out there, and then like teaches it, and then gives it to the guys.
Dude, he's like the Morpheus of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
just
man.
like has such a deep understanding of a lot of martial arts. And
right.
He's also, I think, just obsessed with it. I've heard him talk about it on podcasts before, but just all he does is just teach and study, and like we were talking about before, maintaining that white belt mindset, like always trying to learn and add and see what works and try to teach to the guys.
Yeah, it's actually pretty common. You'll see John and some of the other guys like troubleshoot after class, to where like John doesn't necessarily have like an answer. He's like, well, hey, try this. Like, how does that feel? And then they're like, it feels good. Like, what if I did this? They're all like troubleshooting together, which is also kind of cool, because like there's a lot of jiu-jitsu coaches out there that like are very like one way, and they don't allow feedback or so from like other students and everything like that.
This is the way the technique works. Just fucking do the technique.
Yeah. So I like it in that sense. And in regards to the sequence type thing, I've seen this like everywhere. Let's say I go for an arm bar and I miss it. It's like, hey, what did I do wrong there? Oh, you forgot to grab the wrist at X angle and blah blah, and like that. That's what you did wrong. Versus like, I think John would answer like, it's not necessarily what you did wrong in the armbar. It's what you need to do after it fails, type of thing.
Oh,
like, you know what I mean? Like more so like, and the same thing with like the basic arm drag. Like, why did I miss that arm drag? Because the other guy is competent. But what should you have done after you missed it? That's what you should have done. Versus like, oh, you missed arm drag because you didn't grab 2 inches above the elbow, or like whatever, like that type of thing. Yeah. So that's what I kind of appreciate. It's like, as long as you understand what a move is, it doesn't necessarily mean that you did the move wrong. Just like the other guy's like good.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
like let's say in our role yesterday, we exchanged different moves, we failed, we succeeded. It's like, what did Joey do wrong, or what did Jimmy do wrong? We didn't necessarily do anything wrong. It's just you're good and I have competency, so like things are gonna have like,
not
we exchange.
every technique's gonna work. Yeah, exactly. That's an interesting point. It's like when the technique doesn't work, what's your answer to that? And then the follow up, and then the follow up. And then that's an interesting point, that these guys just have an answer to every answer, or an answer to every failure until there is a success.
Right. And I think training that way mentally is a huge benefit, because I feel like if you focus too much on what you're doing wrong within that one singular move, then like mentally you coax yourself into only focusing on that singular move in rolling in competition. And then by the time they're 5 seconds out of the armbar, you're thinking, so what did I do wrong in that armbar? Versus
exactly.
like, I think these guys are like, gut out and then
answer.
Yeah.
And also too, his mindset of like jujitsu is progressions into the submission. They're always emphasizing the submission, which I think that's a problem with teaching, as well as like maybe emphasizing rule sets, emphasizing getting points, and then waiting it out. They have success across all rule sets because their goal is effective jujitsu, not necessarily scoring. You know, I think that's an interesting point.
Yeah, huge. And also, like, I've actually seen them teach strategy, though, if they're within a camp for a certain competition, which is kind of nice because it helps me get a better understanding of certain rule sets. Like, let's say, for example, when I visited in September and they're in ADCC camp, a lot of their camp was based upon like the rule set and scoring
how
and
to
stuff.
score. Oh,
but
okay,
in general, yes, it's based upon like the position to submission concept and like how to achieve that.
Okay, wow. It's interesting. And then constantly problem solving, not necessarily specific techniques.
Yeah, I would say that there's way more technique shown on gaining the best position, like getting to the back or getting to mount or getting a good position, rather than this one specific submission. It's like at that point, like you're in a pro practice at Roca, so it's like everybody kind of knows what a RNC is, or an armbar, or a triangle. So that's kind of already goes without saying, but the majority of technique in there is focused on, okay, how do we get to the position to where we can start doing all these attacks we assume that you probably already know at this point.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, how to give yourself more opportunity, because let me put it to, like, let's say when I roll with Nez and I'm trying to pass his guard, few and far between, right? The main problem as to why I can't submit him is not necessarily that I can't submit him, is because I don't give myself any opportunity to do so.
Yeah, you can't get to the position where you have an opportunity to submit him.
Whereas, like, and it happens to the best of us, but let's say, like, you put me on Nez's back with, like, half a choke in, like, I could probably submit him at that point. You would hope so, at least.
You're at 90% there.
Yeah, exactly. So, but a lot of the drilling work is done to prepare to increase your frequency of opportunities, basically.
Interesting. That's a really interesting point. Just like over the past 6 months, in my own personal training, like how I handle my training is typically like for about 6 month periods, I have about 2 or 3 techniques or 2 or 3 concepts I'm like trying to work. And for the past 6 months, it's mostly been guard passing and guillotines.
Nice.
And like guard passing is something that I've gone back to just because, it's that kind of for that exact point. Like I've, maybe emphasized guard passing initially. I developed like a pretty good knee cut, and then now I'm at this pretty high level. Part of the challenge of going against anyone high level is fucking getting around their guard. Right. It's not necessarily a specific technique. It's just getting past their guard. And so I've tried to put an emphasis on just this. It's basically step A in a lot of roles.
I agree. Yeah, I think to that point, getting past somebody's guard, once you do it, that's when you can start to feel that they're human. But there's some guards out there that's like, damn, bro.
Dude,
like,
it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. That's how I feel with like Nez or you, like going with your guys' guards. Like, this is gonna take some time. It's gonna take like multiple movements before I make any ground. So when I approach guards like you guys, it's like I'm already mentally like invested in the long haul. Like I'm not expecting just some like stack pass or whatever. Like like we're gonna have to exchange movements for a long period of time before something opens up.
Which part of that is cardio as well? Is there anything that they do in training that's specific to cardio, or is it just the long-term train? Because
I would honestly just say it's just the amount of like live rolling that they get in. There's no like specific like running or any regimen to that, and maybe some of them do their own on the outside, but in the room it's mostly just credited to just the rolling
and the amount of volume of training, because they're doing 2 a days plus lifting plus teaching, which has movement and stuff too.
I would say it's just the volume.
Interesting. Do you do anything specifically for cardio?
Not specifically, unless it's like what I'm doing for my athletic training and lifting, or like something that acts as a supplement, like pro wrestling or something like that.
Yeah.
Not that I'm against it. It's just I'm lazy to fit it in. But
Yeah.
But if I'm like really trying to get really lean, then I'll add some element of it in, which usually is like some combination of like jogging or swimming.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's people who say like if you want better jiu-jitsu cardio, do more jiu-jitsu. And I think there's that makes sense, but I don't know, for me mentally, I feel like if I am running sprints or doing something on top of that, I feel just mentally better about my own cardio, because that's one of my probably biggest like shortcomings in my game, is that like just having not great cardio. Like I'll do a ton of rounds in training and stuff, and I'll feel pretty good, but it's like when I go to competition, and maybe that's just continue to do it over and over and keeping a more consistent competition pace, because I try to do as much as I can, like maybe 6 times a year or more, and when I do that I feel better. But I feel like for some of these matches or some of these competitions, like ADCC Arizona was just here a little bit ago, I think it was like 6 matches till gold, like by the 6th match it's just as much whose cardio is high level as it is whose jiu-jitsu is high level.
True.
So
yeah, and that's really a lot of times the make or break, where you have 2 evenly skilled people.
Who can put on a pace. Yeah.
In my opinion, like this is something that Austin talked to me about a lot. I gained from it. It's a cardio, and it's also the person that knows how to break the other person's cardio better. So like Gordon Ryan also talks about it. I don't think that he's necessarily like a marathon runner as far as like cardio goes.
That's what's interesting about his game too. He's not necessarily putting a pace on anyone.
Right. But he's like so particular with his positioning and grips and whatnot to make the other person work so hard.
Yeah.
So where you could take some of the good cardio and make it look like they don't have it because they're working so hard,
Yeah.
I feel that way a lot of times when I roll with Austin too, especially if I'm ever on bottom. I'm having to bear a lot of his weight. He's very good at like pinning and pressure passing and stuff. And so I'm having to work very hard on bottom. You could argue that I might even have just as good, if not better, cardio than him, but he's able to make it look like it's the other way around because of how he rolls or how he does it. So
how interesting.
Yeah, I like that too, because the cardio in the match and then the cardio sustained through a tournament is also a whole other conversation as well.
Yeah,
I think the cardio can be accomplished in a lot of different ways. So it's like I think if you were to rank it, like you have to prioritize getting cardio from rolling first. Like that's an inevitable. It's like
you're not gonna just only run sprints and then be good at jiu-jitsu.
Right.
Yeah.
Then the question is like, okay, if I want to do a high volume of rolling in order to get good cardio for jiu-jitsu, then what else am I taking into account? The cost benefit analysis. Like, well, okay, your chance of injury goes up a little bit. Your overall energy for other things goes down. Like these different things you have to take into account. So if matching the same cardio level that doing a bunch of rolls would means that you sacrifice maybe a couple hard rolling days to have cardio on the outside, that is obviously less taxing or even less likely in a chance of injury. That might be worth it to like have cardio that's separate, so you're not necessarily tearing your body down as much.
Okay, yeah. Interesting. I see what you're saying. Like if you maybe pull back on jiu-jitsu if it's maybe too much on you, and then added something on there.
Yeah, if you feel like it's too much, or if you're occurring a lot of injury, then that might be something that's worth like, okay, let's get cardio somewhere else so I can still keep up on my cardio, but not necessarily like risk getting hurt as much from the hard rolling.
I see. Yeah. Nice.
So
interesting. Yeah. So you touched on it briefly, but like we were talking about how like you gain more flexibility from some of the lifts that you do. You said that like you lift heavy and then do like mobility lifts afterwards. Is that like how you handle your workouts?
Yeah. So let's say, for example, is the bench day. This is something that a lot of people don't take into account. Is you do a barbell bench, and that you can do full range of motion, like touch the chest, go all the way up, but to some degree it is limiting because the bar can't physically go through your body. But if you go to accessory movements, something as simple as a incline dumbbell press, with the dumbbells being free moving, you can actually work on your mobility with those movements by just going in deep ranges of motion. So like for example, a lot of people that do an incline dumbbell press, it's like here, about like a partial range of motion, because somebody somewhere told them that it's better to keep tension on the chest.
And they're just trying to get heavy and build size with that.
And so the reason why that can be problematic is because you start to separate your difference in strength from a short range to long range. So like maybe from here to here, you're really strong, but because you're never doing any type of training in this range of motion, like with your fist going really far back, there's an imbalance there. And the reason why that's problematic for jiu-jitsu is because, well, if you're only training the points where you're strongest, think about it in jiu-jitsu. Were you ever really in a point where you're like, oh, thank you, God, you're in my strongest position. Let me use this.
Yeah, you're
now.
in my sweet spot right
Yeah,
here.
exactly.
Now I can push you off.
So the reason why I train like I do is because not only is training in a full range of motion with traditional movements good for adding general mobility, but it's also good for preparing jiu-jitsu athletes for the likelihood of the positions that they're going to get into. Like, let's say you grab my arm in a Kimura and it starts going back here. It may not feel comfortable, but like my arm can get back here comfortably versus like
because you have the flexibility too,
Yeah.
or the mobility. So would you say mobility and flexibility are synonymous? Like, is that how you're using the word?
I would say they're synonymous. I would just say mobility is like one step above flexibility. Mobility to me suggests that there's strength in those end positions. Flexibility to me means that you're able to get there, but outside of your own body weight, you may not be able to support actual load. That's what it means to me. Like,
interesting, because you're extremely flexible, and so you're saying it's just through weightlifting and training in these ways that you're able to develop this flexibility.
I would say about 85-90%, yeah. And I'd love to like stand up and show you kind of what I'm talking about, but there's certain movements that you can do in the gym that not only load the muscle to get stronger, but as your muscles, it's so let's say you're going in a deep lunge where you're feeling a deep stretch. The muscle lengthens, it does this. But if you have load on it that you're progressing week after week, it's still lengthening, but as it's lengthening, it's now forced to get stronger in a lengthened position because you're progressing with resistance.
Interesting.
So now, besides just being able to get there, whether it's the splits or whatever, you are now able to support load and be strong from there. That's like the biggest difference between flexibility and mobility to me.
And I guess the first steps of that would be like what you said, regression, just starting from a period where whatever you can do, and then adding weight from there.
Right, exactly. And so that means that for a while, depending upon where you're currently at, you may have to work with way less than your body weight, with your end goal being able to do some of these movements with added weight. Yeah. Something like a dumbbell bench press, we could take 10 pounds and go deep and do a deep stretch, hold that for a little bit and press. You'll start to see your chest and your shoulders open up. But for some of the lower body movements, like hip mobility is a weakness for a lot of people.
I was going to ask. Yeah, my hips are like the tightest. I feel yoga's helped me out a lot with that, but it's not, I guess certain things you're definitely loading on, but you're not, it's not the way that you're training flexibility.
That and the hip flexor so the hip flexor is like the shoulder. A lot of people have shoulder issues too. The main reason I think people have shoulder issues is because A, they do a lot of their like lifting in a short range of motion, and B, they don't work the shoulder in every possible direction that it can move. So like most people do presses or raises in one direction or another, but not acknowledging that it also moves this way, like circles, like all these different things. And so
they're getting super strong in one direction and then not all the other ones.
Yeah, and so the reason why that's problematic is because like you could have basic mobility in your shoulder and your common directions, but be really lacking in the ones that you don't dive into nearly as much. Like somebody that lift as heavy as me, that's like as thick as I am, shouldn't be able to do this comfortably.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. A lot of bodybuilders are like that. They're like basically walk around and like a pose.
Right. Yeah.
because they're
so bound.
Yeah, they're not mobile at all.
And so the reason why I'm drawing the parallel between shoulders and hips is because they're both effectively like the same joint. They're going to be moving in very similar directions, up, down, internally rotating, externally rotating, flexion, extension. So if you really want to have good hips, mobile in every direction, strong, avoid pain, alleviate back pain, right? You have to work the hip in lengthened positions and shortened positions. A shortened position would be putting something on your foot and doing knee raises to work the hip flexor as it shortens.
You're talking about just like kicking your foot outwards?
You could do that, or like let's just say one of the things I do is like you see people do hanging knee raises. Right? If I weighed that and then did a knee raise and held that position, my hip flexor would be forced to get stronger as it shortened.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Most people don't work their hips at all. So just starting is a huge benefit. But now you dive into, it works in flexion. So when you're raising your knee up, that's hip flexion. Extension. So like when you're say like doing a deep lunge and you're extending your hip forward, that's extension. You got internal rotation when your knees going in. You got external rotation when your knees going out.
Yeah.
Working every which way that hip moves. is crucial. And a step past that, working it when it's having to contract and get short, the muscle, like raising your knee, or bringing your leg really far back and the hip is forced to lengthen. So the reason why that's helpful to have stronger hips or alleviate hip pain is because you're now like getting the entire muscle to work to its true potential of functionality, whereas like a lot of people just work one way or another, or only work hip flexors like in flexion basically, and instead of extension. Like there's a whole rabbit hole to go down. But with all these joints, elbows and knees are easy. You got extension, you got flexion. Like you got extension.
Oh, it only goes one way.
Right. Yeah.
Versus these are like ball and socket joints. So it has the multi-directional.
Yeah. So you kind of have to give attention to all the different directions that it can move, in my opinion, to really like start to see progress. With shoulders specifically, one of the biggest things that helped me was you see people do like circles with a PVC pipe. Doing that, getting to the point to where you can do that comfortably, maybe progressively bring your grip in little by little, but then also taking weight and putting it on that same pipe and then being able to move weight now.
Oh, interesting.
And building strength like that. It's just these unorthodox ways where traditionally a lot of people be like, oh, dude, that's terrible for your shoulders, bro. That's terrible for your knees. That's terrible for your back.
Yeah.
Like knees over toes, don't do that. Or don't round your back. That's terrible. Or don't press behind your head. That's terrible. That in a lot of ways has since been disproven. The biggest thing, like if anyone is going to take anything from this podcast from me, there's no exercise that's inherently dangerous. There's just exercises where we aren't able to bear load within certain ranges of motion. So if you took somebody with bad shoulder mobility and I asked them, well, press 200 pounds behind your head. Well, that fucking hurts. That's dangerous.
Yeah, for sure.
For someone like me that has the ability to get there and be strong, I've pressed 225 behind my head like this. You can argue that that's good for me because now that I'm able to get in this position, I'm just building strength on top of it. So I'm just building my own armor to protect myself, because in jiu-jitsu, it doesn't really matter if I have good shoulder mobility or not. You're not going to care. You're going to take my arm to here, you know? So I'd rather be prepared for that in every capacity. Same thing with like, let's say like rounding your back. Like, oh, rounding your back is bad. Rounding your back is bad if I'm going to max out on an 800-pound deadlift, right? But if I'm taking a 10-pound kettlebell and doing purposely rounding like straight leg deadlifts are called Jefferson curls, that can be very useful because now you're actually working the muscles that surround the lumbar spine.
Like the bending muscles.
Yes, exactly. So for example, like, you know, if you have bicep pain and your therapist like, okay, we need to start working curls in to start strengthening that. You have back pain. Why is it any different? It's not, because I mean, it's all muscle at the end of the day. It's just people, because somewhere they saw rounding your back is bad, they universally equated that to everything. The thing is, though, if you want to alleviate back pain and build a strong back, let's talk about the inverting concept. Like, you want to be strong in that position. You need some exercises in there that get you into ranges of flexion in your spine so that when you are here, your muscles are there to protect your spine versus your spine taking load because the muscle and strength isn't there.
Interesting.
And that's where, again, the spine, it extends, it flexes, it also rotates. So having movements in there that express all the different directions that the spine moves is also important, leading up to the neck even.
Yeah.
You know,
how about like the hips? Because there aren't any particular movements that I know of, or like workouts that like strengthen the hips or lengthen it. Because for me, like what's tightest and what's yoga's helped out the most with is like, do you know what pigeon pose is? Yeah, when you like it like kind of flex, or it stretches almost the top side of my hip on the back and like almost my upper butt. Like, are there any particular workouts?
I love that you mentioned that, because I hate being the guy that says I created moves or whatever, but I did something that I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
So knees over toes guy has, you know, his version is called an ATG pigeon, where essentially instead of doing it on the floor, you do that same pose on a bench. So if I were to stand up right now and put my leg on this table and lay flat, that's a way where you can not only stretch and open up to that position, but over time get stronger, because now while your hips externally rotating and your piriformis is lengthening, you're now forced to bear your own body weight. So now your muscle has to get stronger versus being on the ground.
On it.
Versus being on the ground and supporting your body weight, your muscle isn't bearing as much load. So now at that point, after you accomplish that, you can grab a barbell or dumbbells and now isometrically hold that position to build strength there. So then after you get good at isometrically holding a pigeon position, you can now work through a range of motion. And I wish I could show you, but basically, like, picture me doing a pigeon stretch on this table. And then I set up a TRX or a ring behind me.
What's a TRX?
A TRX is like the handle that kind of hang from a pull-up bar. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a ring, like a gymnastics ring.
Oh, okay, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
So I put my back foot in that so it can move freely.
Okay.
So then at that point, it allows my front leg in that pigeon stretch to basically bring my knee up to my chest because I sink down.
And get your hips lower than like your legs are.
Exactly. And then I push into that surface to bring myself up. I'm gonna have to show you, like you should plug it in here somewhere so you can see what I'm talking about.
Okay.
But I think it was one of the...
Can you do that without that level of like progression? Because like what if like in pigeon pose is something that I'm trying to just struggle to get all the way deep into in the first place.
Yes.
So would you like weight load from just like on the ground pigeon pose first?
What I would do is regression. So if you have something that presents an incline, like an incline bench at a gym, you can get into a pigeon pose and put yourself in that position to where it's a little bit different than being on the ground because you're still having to actually bear your weight. But since your hip is at a lesser degree of external rotation because of the incline, it allows you to kind of introduce that concept to your body.
Like lifting a little bit.
Correct. And then you can eventually work that incline bench down to where it's flat again. And then you can be in a full pigeon position.
So like during this, are you trying to like, I guess, flex and then get deeper in the movement?
Yeah. Basically it's the same thing as if you were doing a bicep curl, except now we're getting really, really specific on this given pose. For that, in my opinion, is beautiful for jiu-jitsu. Like
it's super important.
It's
for like lassos, bringing in your guard back in, guard retention.
And for the rubber guard players, like it's essential.
Oh, huge. Which also too. So with that, you think helps with the knees at all? Because I feel like part of the problem with like rubber guard or even positions like that. Like I hit a go-go plata in competition once and my knee fucking popped. My LCL popped in it. And I don't think it was necessarily because of my knee. I think it was because of my hips were so tight. It was putting a lot of tension on my knee.
That's a great question. So what I talk about a lot is when you're rehabbing joints, let's talk about knees, you rehab the surrounding muscles of the knee. And that in ranges of motion that are full, you can actually over time strengthen the tendons and ligaments. It gets into this whole conversation. Long story short, if you work the knee into deep levels of flexion, you cause a stress response that sends what's called synovial fluid to the joint, which is essentially the fluid that kind of sends like nutrients and whatnot to help build and repair and get stronger. So you can make the tendons and whatnot stronger over time by lifting a certain way. Outside of that, though, if you take the nearby muscles, say a hip, and increase your mobility, by opening up your hip, you're more likely to be able to adopt load on the muscle before the joint has to. So if you think about something like rubber guard, for example, one of my first matches at Blue Belt, I don't know, do you know who Don Daubert is?
Wait,
he's a 10th planet black belt that used to be in Arizona.
Yeah, a little bit older guy, like maybe in his 40s.
He's a friend. He
went against John Jones once.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. He's a friend of mine, and we went against each other when I was a blue belt, and he threw rubber guard on me. I had no idea what the fuck it was, but my instincts told me just to push his foot to his face, and his knee popped.
Oh no!
Right?
Wow.
And my bad, bro. Yeah. But my reason I'm saying this is because if you're able to lengthen your hip, your glute, your piriformis, and have that be able to support the load of being in something like rubber guard, then that's going to adopt the tension before the knee does. But if you're taking that into such an extreme range of motion that your hip can't handle anymore,
it goes to the tendons.
It has to go to the knee.
Oh, wow. How interesting.
So to your point, it doesn't necessarily make the knee directly stronger, but it allows your other parts of your body to adopt the load that your knee would have to if you weren't otherwise prepared.
Interesting. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Because of this position, and it's happened a few times. I think my LCLs have popped on at least 3 or 4 different occasions, and I always thought it was my hips, but I wasn't exactly sure.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. That's a great point. For example, when I hurt my knee, another reason why I think I wasn't put on the shelf was because I had developed good internal rotation. So when he came into the side of my knee and I went with it, my knee was able to kind of like go with it a lot longer than most people could. And by the time we landed, let's say like if I had poor, I'm just going to show you. Yeah. If I had poor hip mobility, if I had poor hip mobility and I couldn't like bring my knee in any closer than this, we would have hit here and it would have been a stopping point. Like my hip couldn't assist me anymore. It would have been like
Okay.
complete snap.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas when he came in, I was able to adopt some of that pressure and take that all the way to the ground.
Okay.
To where I only felt the impact when we landed. Versus like, let's say I had terrible internal rotation. I might have felt that while we were
Instantly.
still in midair, and then he just like crashed through my knee.
Okay, wow.
You know what I mean? So that's another instance where in that given moment, my hip mobility didn't prevent the injury, but it may have prevented how bad it could have been.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So yeah, man, that's cool.
I love it. Yeah, dude, I fucking love it.
Yeah, thanks, man.
So you're obviously a very high output individual. What gets you going? What makes you do what you do?
It has to do with understanding what my purpose in life is, being able to manifest and own it. And
what do you think your purpose in life is?
So this is something where for a long time, I've always known that I've kind of wanted to do what I'm doing now, but I was under the pressure for a long time that I'm going to have to like eventually just go the normal route of school, degree, job. And grow up. Right. And thankfully, I was able to avoid that long enough to find that I have a purpose somewhere else. And what I believe my purpose in life is, there's a few different things. One, it's to create the amount of success for myself that then allows my friends to be able to flourish based upon what I'm able to do that bleeds into my business. So for example, more recently, one of my more recent ones was being able to get my friend Matt to quit his full-time job to work for me.
Wow. Yeah.
And then I have my two other best friends that co-own How Strong with me that are also moving to Austin, and I'm in the process of making that happen for them as well. So that's like
incredible.
Thank you. So that's like my biggest thing is becoming so successful that not only can I take care of myself, but I can take care of my three best friends that have basically like dedicated their life to me. And then the people that surround that, my parents, my girlfriend, stuff like that, right? That's like an initial check mark. I got to check this off.
Nice.
Past that, I know based upon what I talked about earlier, when I was 3 years old watching Goldberg on TV, he's my Superman. Like this is like, I was like one of the millions of kids that looked up to him as a Superman and impacted. So I remember times like that, and then I remember being able to actually meet him for the first time, and now seeing where I'm at now with him. There's certain things in life that are just so unexplainable that you don't necessarily need an explanation. You just got to know that somebody's watching over you. And when somebody's watching over you and allowing these very special events to happen, you don't question it. You just take it and run with it. And then to me, once I started running with that idea, I'm like, okay, well, these things happen to me because I'm a blessed individual. I'm very lucky. I'm very grateful. But there's a bigger reason for this. What is that reason? I think all of these things are happening to show me that I myself need to prepare to be in those shoes to now give back and impact people like Goldberg did to me. And I believe I grew up a certain way, and I was exposed to certain things growing up to do just that. And so one of the best things that I did for myself and others before I left Arizona was I was given the very amazing opportunity to run my kids program at TNT. So thank you, Scott Tannenbaum, for that opportunity. The reason why that is so amazing is because for the first time, I saw kids look at me in the same way that I saw myself looking at Goldberg.
Wow.
And I was with those kids for like 7-8 months. And the last day I was there, it was one of the most powerful days of my life for sure. Like all the kids were crying. And although I didn't want kids to cry, it was like I was very impacted by the impact that I had. And it was like a little taste of what I knew that I meant to do, what I need to do with like my given life.
Wow.
So then at that point, after I did everything I could to impact that group of kids, I moved to Texas to, as we talked about, work on myself, build my skills, get myself to a point where I can appeal to the masses. At that point, it's a matter of networking, getting to know people, getting myself on a platform that allows me to have that type of impact on people like Goldberg did to me. And one thing I will say confidently is that my best talent is my ability to meet somebody and have them never forget who I am. Like you meet me and you will never forget who I am. I might be mediocre at all these different things, but you meet me, I have a way to impact people as soon as you come across me. That's like my best talent.
It's the thighs and the short shorts.
Exactly, bro. Exactly.
I'm just kidding. What do you think that is?
I don't know. I think it's a God-given thing. I really do. And I came to the point where I just started owning that. I try to treat people to the best of my ability, and I try to lead by example, and I try to do all the right things for the most part. I'm not perfect, but there's just something where I've always noticed that people tend to want to help me out and tend to believe in everything that I'm doing, at least the ones that I'm close to, the ones I've gotten to know. Everybody has haters. I have thousands of them. But with that said, it's the people that I've been around, the people that have really like supported and believed in me, that have shown me that I can do something special with my life. And that's why I decided to take the risk to move to Texas, to put myself around the people that can make me better, that can help me get to where I want to go. Because it's like, I'm 27 and I got short time to make something happen. And I want to be able to make something happen that can carry myself through until I die.
That's awesome.
I'd rather die with a legacy that says I helped thousands and millions of people along the way. That's the only thing I really want to do. Because if it was up to, because as of where I'm at right now, my business is going great. I'm very grateful with how my business is going. A lot of people will probably stop there, but I have to do more. I know my purpose is more. And the reason why I'm so grateful for podcasts like you to allow me to manifest these things is because every time I have an opportunity like this, I go off.
Yeah.
Why? Because the power of manifestation is real, and B, because this is my best advice to anybody that wants to accomplish something greater in life is, if you want to do something special with your life and you want to actually accomplish that, you cannot be afraid to tell it to anybody. Before this, I would consider you a friend in the Jitsu community, but we don't necessarily know each other extremely well. At a certain point in my life, though, I would be reluctant to say, like, hey, Joey, I want to be The Rock. I want to impact millions.
Sure.
I would be like afraid, like, what if Joey like calls his friends and tells them that I'm a fucking weirdo? Like, those are the thoughts that would go in my head before. Yeah. But as soon as I hit a point to where I was able to own my goals in front of anybody, that's when I noticed my growth and my success happen at a much faster rate because everything aligns. I believe in a higher power. I believe in the universe. I believe that there's something there helping me get to where I want to be. And I want to give credit to that. And I want to give credit to the ability to manifest things for yourself. And I think that's something that everybody should do if they want to accomplish stuff.
That's awesome, man.
So
yeah, part of it, I think that why people resonate with you or have like you have an impact on people when they see you is the belief in yourself, like a confident belief. And, you know, obviously, like you said, there's maybe progressions through that. You're not just super confident from the beginning, but taking steps towards your goals, getting life experiences that reaffirm different things, it adds confidence to that. And then just believing that, you know, trusting in yourself, that like what I think and my opinions, I'm gonna act on them, and there's gonna be positive reactions from that. So
thank you, man.
Yeah, that's I'm sure a huge thing for sure. So
to touch on that, some of my growth within that is like, so I was always taught as a kid, like, be humble, you know, don't be arrogant, don't be cocky. And I still try to live by those morals to this day. But I think it's very easy to misunderstand what humble means. And I also believe that the most successful people on earth have to display a certain level of confidence and even flirt with the line of vanity in order to achieve their goals, but also still maintain a humble foundation. So like, initially when I'm going through this phase, like I'm like 2021 and I'm like, okay, I know I really want to do something big. Like I feel like my life is meant to do something better than just like the norm. But, you know, with certain people like my parents or like different authority figures, I would be kind of afraid to like talk about it. Or say if I just met somebody random at the gym, hey, what do you do? What do you want to do with your life? You know, I'm going to college and I you know, I'll get a job or something. And in my head, I'd be like, no, you don't. You don't want to do any of that. You know,
you're just like, that's the socially acceptable thing. That's what I'm supposed to say.
Right. And I remember thinking to myself, like, how realistic is it of me, to want to accomplish things that you're afraid to talk about to other people? So it's like, I think a lot of us go through this. Like, you want to accomplish this, but you're afraid to like actually like own it. Imagine getting to that point and being afraid to get there the whole time.
Yeah.
Like it's like. It's really hard because getting success in anything takes risk. Yeah. And it's like when I sit here and say, Joey, I'm gonna be something fucking great in this world, that in itself is risk because I could not.
Yeah. What if it doesn't happen?
And if I don't, I'm gonna look like a fucking asshole. But it's like you have to put your name on that, because if you don't, then you're already missing half the battle.
Yeah, that's 100% true. You know, Terrence McKenna talks about it, how like words are magic. You speak reality into existence. Like one thing that he mentions is that they would say, not older people thousands of years ago, like scientists now would say they're epistemologically naive, meaning that they didn't understand the true workings, they didn't understand science, but they understood something that we've almost lost today, that is you speak reality into existence and your words mean something. Like your words are spells into the universe. And that's one thing that, like, you know, Conor McGregor has said, hate him or love him, he said like one of the most beautiful things in the world is putting yourself out there, speaking it into existence, saying this is what I'm gonna do, and then going out there and doing it. Dude. And with life goals, you know, you can there's no deadline. You just keep doing it until it fucking happens. You got to make sure it happen, and it's much more difficult actually than maybe a single fight, because there's a set timeline and so much that goes into it. And with life goals, I mean, that's just. I mean, he did it on the biggest stage that you can. And so it's just, his career has been so impressive in that way. And just that thought that, you know, what I say really means something, and having the confidence to speak it also really means something. And then going out there and making it happen is just a beautiful thing.
100%.
It's incredible.
100%. And
so you said that the next stage from here is getting a platform that you can do these things. And so is that what you believe, like the WWE, or I'm not sure if that's even like the highest goal within it, but pro wrestling is the next step
WWE is definitely the biggest. There's another really big organization called AEW. I'm really open to doing either. I just really want to have that start and start working on that. I also, as soon as there's a writer strike going on, but acting is another thing I want to start actually getting my feet into, as well as modeling and stuff like that. So really anything that allows me to get more eyes on me is really what I'm geared towards. And now that I have Matt working for me, my friends moving out to Texas, I'm able to actually build up my social media even more now, to where I can have more content to show people who I am and what I'm about, type of thing. So nice. It's all kind of accumulating together now. Yeah.
Just building a platform so you can get your word out there. And then is there like I guess like what exactly, you said like giving back to the kids. Is it just being a role model for what's possible in life, or is there like a specific thing that you want to show kids?
So that's exactly it. So for example, if I were to give you my how Goldberg impacted me as a kid, you know, it goes down to the little things, like his mannerisms, the things that he does. Like if I'm preparing for a lift, you'll see me like that, and he used to do that in his matches all the time. But it's just something that I've been doing since I was a kid, like literally since I was a kid, just like this. Like he used to always do that, and I just picked up on it. But with Goldberg, his thing is that he was just this monster. They go in the ring, and he would beat up all the bad guys, and he would beat up like 2-3 of them at a time. So he was like the literal epitome of a superhero in a comic book, but in real life. Yeah. And so that's what a lot of kids drew to. And then he had the physique. And then if you get to know him, he's one of the best people that you can ever meet. People say don't meet your heroes. I say that's bullshit. Like it really comes down to the individual, because Goldberg is like the epitome of the type of person you want to meet. Just extremely respectful, humble, giving, just like everything that you would want to be as a man. Or that's
don't meet your heroes because they're not going to live up to like this ideal in your head.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Like people talk about like Drake was an asshole to them or something. Because they didn't give him a signature or something like that.
And it's too bad that there's people that experience things like that, but from my experience meeting Goldberg, or for anyone that has CT Fletcher as their hero, those are two people that 100% they're just as good of a person on camera as they are off. And so to answer your question, giving back to kids in general, it's just, again, showing them, giving them hope of something positive to follow and model themselves after. Because when I watched Goldberg as a kid, I didn't necessarily think that I was going to do pro wrestling or want to do everything that he does or all these different things. But I just knew that okay, this guy looks like this, but yet he's nice and he's humble, and he treats people a certain way. Like it just gave me the idea of what I should be like, or what I should strive to be like. And kids are so impressionable. So if you have a strong authority figure like that acts a certain way, that treats people a certain way, but can also obviously put down, hold his own if you need to. That's what I think kids should really look up to. Like somebody that is humble, kind, and just displays those qualities, so that
just an ideal.
Correct. So that whatever they want to do with their lives, they can do that with that foundation that they saw from their parents growing up, or from their hero that they watched growing up. I just want to be a superhero. That's it.
Nice. That's fucking badass.
Thanks, man.
Nice. That's a great goal, to become a superhero.
That's it.
Yeah, I think you got to be the superhero in your own story. You know, you got to just trust in yourself and believe in yourself and just get after it. That's the only way to do life. What's the alternative? Fucking just don't try your best. Just get that job and do 8 hours a day. And I couldn't imagine either. You know, I took a chance on not, dropping out of college. I got into real estate pretty young, and part of it was just an unlimited earning potential and just taking control into my own self. And now I don't work for anyone. That's and I can't imagine not working or working for anyone again. Yeah. And so now, I mean, that's not an end all be all for me. It was never something I enjoyed in and of itself, but it's kind of there's like a quote that like you can't steer a parked car. You just got to try something and go for it. And now it's given me an opportunity where, you know, I've made enough money to fucking lose a bunch on starting a jiu-jitsu competition, or like just throw it on, you know, all these like cameras and shit, and then and do this. And so, you know, part of it's just fucking trusting yourself and believing in yourself that you're gonna make it happen.
Yeah, dude, you're fucking killing it, man. I've been really enjoying watching everything that you've done to grow yourself while I've been away. So.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to. I've been trying to lean into that a little bit more too. It was actually just recently, like right before the last or the first BSFC, the first jiu-jitsu event. Like I had actually a psychedelic experience that like made me realize that like I need to lean in more into this. Like I was just thinking about like. I was going through it, and during the experience, I was thinking that like, oh fuck, you know, I've been taking a little bit of time away from my work, and I've been pouring a lot of like love and attention into this jiu-jitsu competition, and I'm like, you know, like I fucking want to. Like I've been having so much fun doing it. Like all this shit happened at the last moment. I had to cancel one of the brackets and set up super fights instead. Wow. And so I'm like calling up people, just making up matches, and then like announcing them. And I'm having so much fucking fun doing this. And I'm thinking about it. I'm like, that's what I want to do with my life. I want to like give my life to something that I love. I don't want to give it to something that fucking sucks. You know, like real estate's great and it's been a great opportunity for me, but no one does it for the love of the sport. You know, no one does it because it's just fun even in and of itself. No one would do it for free. You know, this jiu-jitsu shit, like I fucking loved. Like setting up the competitions has been so incredibly fun. The podcasting, it's like, I love just talking to my boys. Like I love it in and of itself. And like there's this Carl Jung quote that I've like thought about for literally years. That was like, people don't have ideas. Ideas have people. And that right there was just like, I mean, you can fucking think about that sentence for like a year and get no further in your head than like when you first hear it. Like people don't have ideas, ideas have people. And I was since I heard that, I'm like, dude, what fucking idea wants me? Like I will give my life to a great idea. Like if it's meaningful and I believe in it, I will give my life to that idea. And, you know, I'm not sure necessarily, like, I think I've found aspects of it, and I think like my life will continue to grow. Like all I know right now is that I'm spending a lot of more time into shit that I really love, and it's been fucking sick doing it. Awesome. So, you know, and one thing that I've recognized too is that there's a lot of other people giving their life to shit that they love, and that's been a beautiful aspect as well. You think like for me, like working in an office, most people also work in an office, and even though it's not your typical office job where I have to be here and have to leave here, it's like it's still a fucking office. You know, I'm sitting in front of a computer doing shit, and so now leaning into more of the shit that just like I truly have passion for. I meet more people and see more people and have more interactions with people that are also just giving their life to things that they truly love. And it's been incredible. There's so many people like that, and it's both things are possible. Yeah. And like you said, it's very risky at first. Like it's like starting a podcast. It's like no one knows exactly how it's gonna go. I saw another quote the other day. It was like, everything is corny until it works. It's real corny on YouTube, fucking posting for zero views until you go viral. It's real corny posting your gym progress in the gym until you're fucking yoked. Right. You know, it's always corny until it works.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much just resonates with exactly what I was saying. Yeah, you just gotta do it. You gotta start too.
Yeah. Because it's not guaranteed from the beginning.
No, you know? Very few people are able to just blow up, right? No. But and the other thing with that coin is what I've heard is for the people that blow up fast, a lot of times they go down just as fast. You know, a lot of times it's the people that...
It's like the lottery winners. Yeah. You know, they didn't learn how to make that money, so they were just giving it and then they blow it all.
Blow it, yeah. So a lot of times, like you see the people that have been doing it for a while and then all of a sudden they kind of blow up. And I like to think I'm kind of doing the same thing. I've been doing this quite a long time. You know, I started lifting when I was 5, if anything. So it's like one of those things where like, just because my progression has been slower, the thing that I have to focus on is that it's been consistent. Like it's been consistently growing. I've been consistently getting more opportunities. Like that's what you got to focus on, because then the big numbers will come when they're meant to happen. And that's the other thing to all of this is like when you feel doubt, it's completely natural, because if you, it's going too slow or things aren't happening or nothing's happening, that doesn't mean that it will never happen. It just means it's not your time. Yeah. For example, when I was 21, you know, like in the fitness world, there's like all these big YouTube channels, these famous guys. And I used to sit there as a 19, 20, 21 and like, oh man, I would love an opportunity just to be on their channel and talk and like get more people watching me and stuff like that. But then I think about it, when I was 19, 20, 21, had I been given that opportunity, I would not have been ready for it. Like I would have been awkward on camera. I would have not had near the knowledge that I have now to be able to articulate myself, to appeal to people. Like I just would not have been ready. I wouldn't been able to seize the opportunity. But after, fast forward 6 years, I've worked on my camera skills. I've worked on my knowledge. I've been able to teach, and I have those skills developed. Then this past year, I was given dozens of opportunities like that, like major YouTube channels in the fitness community. I've been on the majority of them, you know, in powerlifting at least. And I think about, if I did the same thing back then, I would have been awkward. Like you could go on my YouTube very, very deep, and it's just awkward, it's cringe. Yeah. But like it took that to get to a point to where I can do this with you and speak confidently and speak fluently and do the same thing on a YouTube channel. And so with my other goals, in my opinion, it's the same thing. I want to impact millions. I want to be on a huge platform. I want to do these different things. It's not happening right now in this moment. It may not happen within the next year, but it doesn't mean it won't happen. In my opinion, from my experience in life, it'll happen when I'm ready and the right pieces are in place.
Yeah.
That's my motivation to not give up.
And when the universe believes you're ready. That's like what I've thought, you know, before. It like, you know, when you were a 19-year-old kid, the universe was like, you know, you're not ready for all the reasons that you just outlined. If they would have given it to you, it would have been taken away.
Yeah.
And like the difference between, you know, you and some of these lottery winners or these people who go viral on TikTok instantly is that you've built up a skill set that has gotten you to this point. It's like, you know, Jordan Belfort, you know who he is?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that guy is a guy who, you know, he got really greedy and probably did some immoral things. I think he says that himself. Like, you know, he got to a point where he thought greed was the best thing in the world. But he developed a skill set that allowed him to make like $56 million at 26 years old and then get it all taken away from him. And now the guy's worth over 100 million again because he developed a skill set. And even though everything was taken from him, he could build it back up, you know?
Yeah, I actually did
maybe not a shining example of a great human to model yourself after, but an obvious like fucking juggernaut. He was 26 years old and became one of the top law or brokerages in stock brokerages on Wall Street. I mean, that's no fucking feat to sneeze at.
Yeah, seriously.
You know?
I did a project on that in college actually, so I'm familiar.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, how interesting. Yeah, very interesting story.
It is, but it is relative to what we're talking about for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You just got to fucking put it out there and send it.
Yeah, man, I agree.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Awesome. Well, you know, I think we've done about like an hour and a half. I know you've got a busy day today, so
it was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for coming. It's been an honor to have you.
Same.
And just, you know, again, it's great to have a great friend that is also just sending it on themselves, and you're an inspiration for me.
Thanks,
and
man.
so
You too.
I'd love to see your success. I love seeing your success, and I love to see your continued success as life goes on.
Means everything, bro. Thank you, and you too, bro. For real.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Thank you, brother.
Absolutely, man.
Us.
Thank you. Us.